Hello everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 16e and compare it against the iPhone 16 and see which particular iPhone is the better one for you. Now, I think the clear answer here is that an iPhone 16e is probably going to be the one that is going to be cheaper, but it's just not going to be as good of an iPhone overall as the iPhone 16. The 16e is basically just a cheaper version of the iPhone 16, so you're just going to have to kind of keep that in mind for the most part. However, the iPhone 16 right now costs about $799, where the iPhone 16e costs about $599. So that is kind of a pretty big difference in and of itself. Like, you are saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars by going through and basically picking up something like an iPhone 16e when it kind of comes down to it. So we'll go and see how both these devices hold up and compare against each other. But if you do want to pick up either one of these particular phones, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both, the iPhone 16, which came out late last year, just like a few months ago, this phone on the front side is giving you a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. Now, with this type of panel, this phone does look pretty good overall. It's giving you that dynamic island on the front, which I think is nice. Not really too much to complain about there. And that's kind of it. It's kind of a panel that we've seen for a long time now, and it's kind of what you'd expect from a majority of panels. The iPhone 16e, on the other hand, is also giving you a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. So this panel is also very nice. It just doesn't get as bright as the iPhone 16 as far as I'm aware, but the other thing too, it's giving you a notch up top. The notch can be kind of hit or miss for a lot of people. I personally would have loved to have moved away from a notch earlier than even the iPhone 14. So the fact that we even have an iPhone 16e that's giving us, a notch now, it is fairly outdated when it kind of comes down to it. Even for $600, that is kind of a downside. But both these phones are lacking something very important. Both these phones are lacking 120 Hz displays. So they're both kind of missing out on that specific thing when it kind of comes down to it too. On the bottom, you're giving your USB Type-C ports, which is amazing. I love having USB Type-C, and you are essentially getting that on both these phones. The iPhone 16 and the 16e are both giving you action buttons, but the iPhone 16 is the only one that's giving you an actual camera control button, so you can actually take photos and videos and zoom in and out of the camera button instead of the iPhone 16. The 16e is not really giving you that type of capability. So that right there is one of those other kind of minor things to keep in mind there too. Now beyond that, some other stuff to keep in mind with the iPhone 16 and the 16e on the backside, both are giving you these frosted glass backs, which once again look and feel very, very good. If you're going to go through and pick up a phone, both these phones will look fairly good and fairly similar for the most part as well. So that is kind of a nice thing to keep in mind here too. Both these phones will feel fairly good for the most part. The backside of the iPhone 16 is giving you this dual camera setup. The 16e is giving you this single camera setup. So it is kind of interesting to have only a single camera setup now, but I guess that's just what ends up happening sometimes when you have to go and get a cheaper phone. So overall, for the most part on the exterior, they're both kind of similar in some ways, but there's a lot of ways the iPhone 16 is definitely better. I mean, it's definitely giving you a nicer display with the dynamic island, a brighter display. It's giving you an extra camera, and it's giving you MagSafe capability too. The 16e, on the other hand, is not really giving you those things. It's just giving you a cheaper phone. So you are definitely missing out on some things when it comes down to these two devices. When it comes down to the price tag, we already kind of hit on it. $599 versus $799. It is a pretty stark difference when it comes down to it. So if you were wanting to go ahead and upgrade your phone, well, it would definitely make a lot of sense for you to go through an upgrade to a device that, maybe is cheaper. But I think even so far, I've already listed a couple things where the iPhone 16e is missing out on. When it comes down to the cameras, both these phones are a little interesting as well. So with the iPhone 16e, this phone is giving you a 2-in-1 48 megapixel fusion camera, where the iPhone 16 is giving you a 48 megapixel fusion camera and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. So the 16e is basically giving you only that camera setup that the iPhone 16 has for the wide-angle camera. The rest, the 16e is missing out on that fusion camera, on the ultra-wide camera. So that in and of itself is a very, very interesting thing. So in every single way you could probably imagine, a device like the iPhone 16e is just not going to be as good as something like the iPhone 16. That's just kind of what ends up happening here. And once again, I would hate for you to go down the direction of thinking that the iPhone 16 is a better device here when it isn't really. So the 16 is definitely going to be giving you the better camera. The 16e is just going to be not as good, but it's not to say that the 16e's camera is terrible. They're both giving you essentially the same types of resolutions you can film in. So that is kind of nice. You're not really missing out on too much when it comes down to that side. They're both giving you 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which as always is a nice thing to basically have. But beyond that, there's not really too much else going on here. The big thing though is that the iPhone 16e is missing out on that ultra-wide camera, which would have been kind of nice to have if you were getting it on another type of camera like on the 16. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there too. Now, in terms of some other areas of this phone like software longevity, both these phones are going to be supported with software for many, many years. So nothing is really going to happen anytime soon. Both these phones are going to be supported with software for many generations of software, so that's always a nice thing to basically have. If you're going to go through and pick up a phone, this is without a doubt a really nice thing to have. So whether you're going to pick up the iPhone 16e or the iPhone 16, both these phones are going to be supported with software for many, many years. So they're both going to be lasting around the same exact amount of time. When it comes down to their batteries, this was something that was very interesting. So Apple has stated that the iPhone 16e's battery is basically giving you 26 hours of video playback, where the iPhone 16 was rated to give you 22 hours of video playback. So that right there is actually very interesting because you are technically getting better battery life from something like the iPhone 16e than the iPhone 16. So if you're going to go through and pick up a device, that is in and of itself a very interesting thing to kind of think about, because with a device like the iPhone 16, that is definitely going to be the one that you would have imagined would be better because it's more expensive, but that isn't quite the case here. And that's just kind of what ends up happening when you're going to go through and like pick up a device. So from that side too, that is a very interesting thing. Now on top of that, when it comes down to their chipsets and their power, like I said before, they're basically around the same type of performance. The iPhone 16 is giving you the A18 chip, same thing with the 16e. The main difference here is that the iPhone 16e is basically missing out on a extra core for their GPU core. So if that's a big deal to you, then you're going to have to kind of figure that out. But for the most part, the iPhone 16e isn't really going to be, that much less powerful. Like, you're really not going to notice it. If you're running out of power on an iPhone 16e, you are probably going to run out of power on a 16 as well. It just so happens the 16 is, just a little bit more powerful. But if you're doing app opening, speed tests, and all that stuff, you're probably not going to be able to tell those big of differences if you're looking at both these devices. So that, without a doubt too, I definitely want to get that out of the way because that is a very, very important thing to keep in mind there as well. So overall, to kind of sum up this whole entire comparison, what I will definitely tell you is that I think both these phones are good, right? But both these phones are not the best. Right, both these phones are lacking out on things that I would want inside of a phone. Like, I would want my iPhone to have a ProMotion display, and both these phones are lacking out on it. Beyond that, I think the 16 is the better phone here. But to be honest, for the price tag of both these phones, $600 versus $800 basically, I think an iPhone 15 Pro, which is a little bit more expensive than a 16e but cheaper than an iPhone 16, that would be the one I would recommend every single person to buy. That is a way better phone with a way better display. It fixes everything that I basically have problems with, and those are the ones I'd recommend people to buy. The 16e and the 16 I think are overpriced. It's kind of crazy because even the 16e is so much cheaper, but that still is not a phone I would recommend buying either. So take it as you will, but that's kind of how I see both these devices holding up and kind of comparing against each other. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.